England, it's the Euros. We're here to talk about England today. Thanks to everybody for joining us on the live stream. If you're watching this later, don't worry. I'm sure it was fine. I'm sure it went very well. Please say hi, John Mackenzie.
Hi, John Mackenzie.
And please say hi, JJ Bull.
I knew he'd say that.
I knew he'd say that as well. He's a terrible troll. That's what we call him here in the office. Yeah. Well, anyway, listen, there's a lot of England stuff to discuss today, largely on account of the fact that it's been pretty. It's hard for me to say. It's been pretty bad so far, but we're going to be kind. I'm setting that as a rule, as opposed to you both arriving, assuming that we were going to do that. We're going to be kind. We're going to talk about where it's not going right. We're going to talk about where we think maybe it could be going better. We're going to look ahead to the Switzerland game, and we're going to talk about how England will eventually win the Euros, as it was in my dream last night. Yeah. So listen, I don't think there's anywhere else to start, JJ Bull, than just by getting straight to the point. They've not been great.
They've been bad.
Yeah, I would go as far as to say they haven't been great. What do you think the main problems have been, really?
I think they've been mostly covered by absolutely everyone else already, but we should do them again just to assert what we think of them.
Yeah.
So there's too many players who don't suit playing next to each other. There's systemic problems where the team are unable to move the ball through lines to anyone else to get up the pitch. They're very slow. It's very risk averse. There's no real. There's no people running in behind. There's no one offering options.
It feels a little stodgy, would you say?
It feels stodgy. It just doesn't seem like a cohesive team. They're really imbalanced. There's players in the wrong positions. Players being played out of position just to try and make something work. Yet there's always this idea that they can just find a way to get through. Because what often happens in previous tournaments, I didn't think they were very good in any of the other previous tournaments. And in fact, as we've discussed many times before, and you disagree with, the minute they play someone who's actually good, they get found out and they lose. Like, what was it they got through? Was it Colombia in the World Cup, where they drew with them? Should have been better than that. They got a penalty shootout, you know?
They beat
These things
Germany.
Happen. These things happen.
They played pretty well against France. You know.
Did they win that game against France?
No, but they didn't come unstuck. You know.
Yeah, that's true. But anyway, so that is my sort of point: is that the way Southgate wants to play, it makes sense. There are loads of other teams that have had success with it, and there's always that nagging suspicion that they might be able to make it work on the big stage. However, having watched all of their games so far, they're very lucky to still be in it.
I think so, and I mean the biggest laugh I had so far in the tournament was on the final group stage days when when there's the moment when we realised that Spain, Germany, France and Portugal would all be on the other side of the draw. Even I can admit that's exceptionally lucky. I'm going to ask John about this now, but if you're watching in the chat live and you have questions you want to ask us about England, throw them in. We might talk a little bit about a couple of the other teams later in a points are bad section, so if you have questions there, do throw them in. John, would you agree broadly with JJ's assessment? Where do you think that mainly it's been going wrong?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear JJ saying that in previous tournaments they've come unstuck against good teams, because I think this tournament they've come unstuck playing against everyone. So that represents maybe something of a decline from Gareth Southgate's England. I think the reason for that is that we're seeing smaller teams with a much better idea of how to counteract some of the things that England do, because we've known in previous tournaments England always have had ball progression issues, and they've sort of got away with it by having good players who can sort of eventually move the ball down the field, lots of U-shaped passing, squeezing the ball into wide areas and essentially trying to get the opposition to fall back into a low block. And once they've done that, the idea then is almost to play like you're playing set-piece football, but from open play, right? Which is to get the ball into the box. You've got superior, strikers like Harry Kane, Jude Bellingham, really good box crashers, good wide passes of the ball to get the ball into that box. And the idea is eventually you will break down that low block through simply having much better players. I think what we've seen this tournament is a lot of the smaller teams coming out with really nice mid-block ideas, which has done a couple of things. One of them is that it's just made it harder for England to progress the ball through the thirds, get it into those scenarios where they're then going to try and get it into the box. And that means that they just have much fewer chances to actually score. And if you look at the underlying numbers for this tournament, England have barely created anything. And if you look at the goals that they have created, there was a couple of set-piece goals eventually against Slovakia. And then, there's only 2 other goals beyond that, right?
There's been 4 so far in the 4 games.
Not great. But what we saw from Slovakia, like a really nice ideas of how to cause problems in these wide areas where England usually end up trying to work the ball through just one-touch passing, with really nice mid-block ideas. So let's imagine the ball's here. This is Slovakia, and they basically played with a sort of 5-1 shape, but the eights in this formation are going to jump out quite aggressively. So you end up almost with like a 4-4-2 shape anyway on the ball side. If they go the other way, then everyone shifts around and it becomes like this. When the ball goes out wide, often what you'll see is the wide forward coming out here and the 8 then dropping in to help out. But this does leave possibilities of being opened up. So, for example, if Saka comes wide to receive the ball from Walker, fullback is coming around, and there is space in here to be attacked.
Yeah.
I think I would have expected.
There's no one to run through. Right?
Yeah, you would expect, particularly on the other side, because I think England do have like a left side bias. A lot of their players, we've talked a lot about Foden wanting to come inside, but he still plays on the left. Bellingham likes to drift left. Kane often drifts left as well. So they have often overloads in these sorts of areas where the idea should be that eventually you're forcing this situation where with one of these players wide, the fullback has to jump, and you've got space in behind for what we call a seam run, just into this channel with one of these going, and then the idea being then you're causing problems for this player. Does he go? Does he stay? If he doesn't, you've then got balls into the middle, then you can progress the ball through. And this is what so much of the problems come down to now. It's like if you're playing against blocks that are causing you problems, you need to have tactical solutions for breaking down those blocks. And England simply haven't had that. They've just relied on individual moments, and it's kind of like even when they fall back into a lower block, it's then like, well, we can't go round the outside of the block, we can't go through the block, so maybe we'll just try and give the ball to someone like Bellingham or Foden, and just how many times have you seen them just pick the ball up around the edge of the box, run into a congested area and lose the ball? In these low block areas, there are also solutions for like breaking down low blocks, and we've not seen that from England either.
I'm smiling because I'm sad.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry to break it to you, but we talked a lot about Spain being good this tournament, and they're a really nice example of a team who have like these wide forwards who can get into.
That Nico Williams goal, by the way, good lord,
yeah, that was
beautiful.
Yeah,
Sorry, carry on.
But Spain are coming up against a lot of low blocks, right? So Slovakia pressed really high against England in the first half, caused England basically England couldn't get anywhere near the goal. Second half, obviously they drop off a little bit. They're a goal up, and they're also, getting tired, so they're falling back into a lower block. So it's easier for England to bring the ball into their half, but then you still have to break down the low block. And we've seen from Spain that when you have players like Nico Williams, who's a really exciting two-way winger, what you end up having to do then is you have to bring your wide forward in to help out defend with the fullback. And then what Spain have is they have two things. They have a fullback going down the outside, and then they have a midfielder coming into this area here as well. And so you've got the threat of the ball being played in here to the fullback, which means you then have to box defend even deeper. You have the threat of the fact that if the ball comes in here, this player has to drop out, this player has to come in. You're then leaving space on the edge of the box. So what you're doing is with players have gravity like Nico Williams or Lamine Yamal on the other side, suddenly you're starting to pull up these low blocks apart.
They draw the players in such as satellites, John.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Moons.
Orbit. There is an orbit around Nico Williams that pulls players towards him, which then creates space for his teammates, but it's pulling this block apart. So if the ball can then come out to the edge of the box, you've got players like Rodri then who have much more space and time to just set themselves and take a shot like they did against Georgia.
And you're saying Trippier doesn't have a gravitational pull?
I'm saying that England aren't playing in such a way as to use because they do have players with gravitational pull. They have Foden and Bellingham, and as we're saying, those players often come central, they get overloaded in the middle. Yes, eventually it will pull the block apart, but more often than not, they're just losing it, balls going long, and then the opposition are resetting. So the idea is that when you're coming up against these low blocks, there's some really basic ideas that you can employ to make these blocks much harder, make it much harder for these blocks to defend, because all these guys want to do is just stay in their lines of four or 4 and 5, not get pulled around too much. And then if England do try and come through the middle, they're like, oh, we're really well set here because we've got all of our players really nicely situated. Where's the ball gone?
Where has the ball gone? Here. That's a question I've been asking during England games as well.
Whereas if you could do the same thing with Bellingham, but then you've got like an overlapping fullback, then suddenly you're pulling this block apart, and now he has much more scope to actually be able to do the runs that he's trying to do in the middle, because they've used the play in the wide area to break that block down. Well,
we are going to come and talk about what might happen in the Switzerland game. Obviously, Trippier came off injured in the game against Slovakia, so we'll come to discuss that. A comment from Jarjo64, JJ Bull, says Gordon and Palmer could be our Yamal and Williams if we had a different manager. What do you think?
I think having players that run in behind is really important. stretching, like width and depth, are obviously really important within any football system.
I've always thought so.
Yes.
That's how I approach my physical capacity.
Yes, but I mean, you'll do like all small-sided
Width and depth.
games, so you can try and make sure that you're keeping your width and your depth, because it not only gives you options to pass and play through, but it forces the opposition to do certain things. So, really, like obvious things that they're missing Raheem Sterling and Marcus Rashford, who are normally in that sort of team.
I was going to ask you about Marcus Rashford, just to make. I'm not obviously had a fairly poor season from a form perspective, so I understand the decision not to take him. But what it does feel as though the team are missing, particularly against a team where there might actually be some more space in behind, is when I look at that starting 11. Apart from Saka, who seems quite isolated, I don't see the player who's going to run in behind.
Anthony Gordon is right there, and he's not being used, right? I mean, you can complain about the profile and whether or not you think Rashford's a better option, but
sure.
Gordon is there. Like that's what he's there for, and he's not being used. So it's clearly like a tactical decision not to do that.
But the problem is that you lose Foden, who is one of the, in theory, one of the best players in the entire tournament. He should be. But like
Seb Stafford Blaw's in the chat, by the way. He says hi.
Oh, that's good. Hi, Seb. Good. Hi, Seb. So, if you have, like, this might be very obvious, but if you have someone who runs in behind, like a striker, say Ollie Watkins came on and made a bit of difference, right? If you've got Kane, what Kane likes to do is drop in deep, and often that might mean you get space for Bellingham to run in, but Bellingham's having to drop in and help out with build-up because the other teams are blocking in the mid-block here to stop the balls getting through to Rice and Mainu, and whenever one of these manages to finally get the ball, the next one is then also already marked, so they can't pass it. So progression is really slow, ends up going mostly wide, and then Trippier is not left-footed, doesn't want to use it, so the ball goes backwards in. So like John's saying, lots of you passing going around the pitch. If you have someone who runs in behind, just up top or on the wings, anything, you make this run here, it makes someone make a decision whether you go with them, and it depends on the pressure they're putting at the top here. So there's not enough pressure on the ball at the very top. Say Gay has the ball, and the opposition team is just trying to force them wide rather than putting pressure on them. They can launch that over the top for this pass in here. You saw it in the World Cup with Raheem Sterling a few times. Like, that run's really important, getting that sort of thing in there. But we have, like, Foden was trying to make the run and not getting the pass, because oftentimes you'll put the ball back to someone like, say they've got everyone's getting blocked with the way the opposition team are playing. The ball might end up with Trippier. So if you're left-footed, you can play the ball down the outside to try and get someone in making a run there. If you've got Trippier here in his right foot, you get the different kind of angle, so you can play this sort of ball over the top. Again, no one's making that run, so you don't get the use of that particular kind of player, and everyone else then bunches in to try and get on the ball. And so then you have players like Bellingham, who in the very first game was great. Everyone thinking, oh, he's amazing, he's always on the ball. But if Bellingham is always here and here and here and here and here and here and here, good players know you have to get out of his way so that you then create space. So like, Bellingham might be actually useful not being on the ball a lot, because if someone's going to stay with him and he drags them out wide, that might free up space. But then guess what doesn't happen? Kane doesn't drop in to receive the ball, and then there's no one else there to run in behind. And because he then drops in, the opposition can just squeeze up, and then there's no threat. And so you're stuck here with no way to play out, and you can't do anything about it. And so then you play really slow and boring, and it drags it down. And then you start to lose your momentum, your confidence, and it turns into what we're currently seeing.
One final point before we move on to the next section, John. We've talked about this a lot with England before in previous tournaments, that they set up fairly pragmatically. We know that Southgate has kind of admired what Deschamps has done with France. It's clear that that has been a way to win or be successful in international tournaments. So I don't think anybody here expected them not to approach the tournament in that way. But what we're seeing, it's not just a reflection of that, right? It's that not working.
Yeah, and it comes back to what we were talking about before, which is that I think previously teams have been happy to sit deeper against England and just sort of take their chances on sitting out a low block and maybe hitting them on the counter. But and that offers an explanation why when England are coming up against better teams, they maybe struggled a little bit more, because those teams are more willing to press higher up the field, give them less space and time, and allow them to progress the ball less.
Do you think that's an influence from the domestic game? Because I feel like I've seen those patterns happen in... With Manchester United, for example, it happened for a long time that they couldn't score because everyone sat deep against them, even when they weren't a great team post-Ferguson. And then one or two teams that you would consider to be smaller than them pressed high and played aggressively, and Man United fell apart, and suddenly everybody started to do it.
Everything's about trade-offs, right? So if you're sitting deep to try and block out a team like England, you're giving them all of the possession. You're making it easy for them to move the ball down the field. And what you're saying is, you're going to sling the ball in the box and we're going to, for 80 minutes, just head it away constantly. When you're playing, not only is it the case that when you're playing against a team like England who have elite players, they're better at finding the crosses into the box, they're better at finishing those chances. It's just incredibly unlikely that you're going to be able to hold out in 90 minutes. And I think what we're seeing now is, an influence from the domestic game where a lot of these teams are coming in with players who are playing, will be playing in every phase of the game and will have plans. So you can bring in, like, this is pretty much I guess this is a 4-1-4-1 mid-block, I would call it, but there's plenty of 4-4-2 mid-blocks. these are the sorts of ideas that are being used by domestic teams. This is very similar to what Liverpool do, for example. And obviously none of these players are playing for Liverpool, but we're seeing those sorts of ideas in the domestic game. So the idea then is that you can bring together a bunch of players at loads of different clubs and say to them, you guys are all doing this out of possession stuff at your domestic club. There's not a huge amount of variation for out of possession ideas, right? It's like you've got to be in banks of four. The player who's going to jump in this case is one of the eights.
Yeah.
Everyone knows how they respond when that player jumps. If the wide player jumps and the fullback jumps, everyone knows what the rules are. It's not hard to bring that in. So a lot of these players will just be like, second nature to us.
That's one of the fun things I think about this, to talk about and think about with this England team, though. We've chatted about it a little bit already, is the relationship with Bellingham and Foden. I don't mean to pick them up specifically because I don't think many of the relationships on the pitch have worked at all. But what's interesting to me, whether or not it's actually reflected in how they're playing, is that Foden plays for a Guardiola team that are incredibly structured and have, specific sets of instructions for every possible circumstance. And Bellingham plays for Ancelotti's Real Madrid, where he's encouraged to be expressive and be relational, essentially, and find ways of solving problems as a player on his own on the pitch. That's a simplification of that dynamic. But does that mean when you put them in a team together that their natural inclination might be to do something completely opposite, the polar of what the other one is doing?
I think collective tactical ideas get a bit of a bad rap these days, but this England team is a classic example of why you can't simply just do that, even with very, very good players. Jude Bellingham is a great example. Like, okay, he pulled out a really important goal for them at the weekend. That's not come from like being given freedom. That's come from a set piece, and in England we're very much heading out. Make no bones about it, this England team is tactically deficient, and the problem that they've had is in previous tournaments you can get away with it. You can get away with not having plans and rely on individuals. And they can get away with it for the rest of this tournament. But the problem is now is that I think it's much harder to do that when the reality is that the teams that you're playing against now are implementing much better tactical setups. You're reducing the amount of moments you're likely to have, and those moments are still incredibly lucky as well. So we've talked about it before, like with Phil Foden, we talked about creating space in the box in a block so that he can have better chances. That's what's happening at Man City. With Bellingham, it's slightly different, right? Because they're a very, very good team, and a lot of the time, they can solve those problems because in every position they've got incredible players. This England team isn't of the same sort of level that Real Madrid is at in every position.
They're not Real Madrid.
They are not Real Madrid, no. For me, with a few more tactical ideas, and it doesn't need to be, oh, we know exactly what we're going to do in every phase of play.
Yeah.
Often there is still a huge amount of flexibility within these tactical systems. But even an idea of like how to break down a block, how to play through a mid block, would make this England team so much better. So the question is now, I think, okay, fine, they're in the situation they're in. They can't really change that. The question is, how do they make the most of this situation and hope they keep getting those moments?
That is the question, John. Well, actually, the question written down here is, how do we think that they could get better in theory, JJ Ball?
Well, I've got one directly linked to what John's talking about there with Bellingham and Foden, because they played together in the World Cup. So they did work, was it the World Cup? Yeah, the World Cup.
It was the World Cup.
They both played, right?
Bellingham wasn't as a fundamental part of the team then, and Foden didn't actually play that often in the World Cup, did he? But they technically did.
They started, at least one definitely started with this sort of thing. But the difference being, rather than having Trippier, a right-footed left-back, they had Luke Shaw. Having that overlapping full-back is enormous. Again, John's example earlier shows exactly why that's so important. But it also like I talked about depth earlier, the width is really important. So you need to have this player stretching the pitch at certain times to free this player to play and go into those positions. Otherwise, you all get bunched in there. If I go and look at another team, how I'd make them, what's the question? How I'd make them better? Or
how do you think they could get better? Yeah.
I think they need more options playing out from the back specifically. So I think their build-up has really has been figured out. So the England of the last few tournaments kind of knew, the very first tournament, Southgate, no one really knew exactly what they were going to do, and they've progressed a bit. It's exactly what they want, but they're lacking a lot of their tactical tools that maybe Southgate didn't realise at the time, or just doesn't want to use this time for risk-averse reasons, like not having a runner in behind, things like that. So I wonder whether against Switzerland particularly, especially because of the way they play, he might revert to using a back three and having wing-backs, because that gives you a higher starting position for your wing-backs, but gives you different passing options and lanes at the back. So say this is the back three, and I'll take out Saka, for example, and put on I'll put Alexander-Arnold and something like that, right? So,
could you put Saka in Trippier's place now? I mean, he did move to left back for about 10 minutes at the end of the Slovakia
I
game.
don't think he wants to play in that position, and I don't think...
Forget about what he wants. What do I want?
They played Eze in that position as well.
Yeah. But what is this thing that Southgate's talking about having finishers at the end? He doesn't. He just has subs. He's trying to make them feel better. But we've had finishers. He'd leave some players on the bench and bring them on later on.
Finishes as though they're players who are going to come on.
Yeah, starters and finishers.
The plan is always for them to come on, and
he's got his best team and he's got his less best team that he puts on afterwards. So, but if you have this, it's a higher starting position, and
there was
also
a little tonal shift there, and I heard it. You be kind.
Right, so it means you've got, like, rather than having this is harder, I think, to block if you're trying to play against them. Because you've got different options. You've now got the wide player on either side. You've got different options, people dropping in different positions. You can play a box. You can do loads of different things with it. They'd have more options of playing out from the back, and they still retain that safety that they want. Neither Rice nor Menu is fantastic at playing in that kind of a pivot role on their own. I don't think he'd want to risk that either. So you give them a bit of safety with numbers, different angles. One can step into midfield when they want to. Obviously, there's no Gahey now.
Yeah.
But this is another problem they've got, is that they could do this, but now they're missing Gahey, and that means that their options, again, aren't fantastic. So
Gomez, perhaps, there?
Maybe Gomez, maybe Lewis Dunk. You've got people who can come in and do it, but like it's not perfect, so he might be stuck playing with his 4 because that's what he needs to be able to do. I think, like...
I mean, to me, how different is this formation from what they're actually playing? I guess apart from Bellingham's cross here. Like, if you've got Gahey here, I mean, Walker is basically playing as a third centre-back and Trippier's pushing off. So you've basically taken off Saka for Trent Alexander-Arnold.
But this isn't the whole thing, this is the back. So then I would have, you'd probably drop Foden, possibly, and you'd have Bellingham as this sort of player here with Kane, and then you put another striker. We'd played Tony, so maybe that's the most likely one he'd have. One can run in behind, you've got dovetailing, they can both drop. Tony's able to hold the ball down, so when they want to play long over the press they can. Same with Kane, should be able to do that too. And you can play very basic, like just basic football where you can try. You've got the options of crosses in the box. Trent Alexander-Arnold can do things he wants to do from being a wide fullback that he used to for Liverpool with the support of players behind him. And then you've got 2 forwards. I don't think it's an amazing way to play. It's not even what I think they should do. It's what I think is the options of what they've got. Based on how safe Southgate is and what they have available to them. And then you still have the options of finishers. You can then take Tony off and you can stick Foden on, and you can take Bellingham off and you can play a 4-3-3.
I'd like to see more Watkins as well. I thought he was really good in that 10 minutes he had in the first game. Yeah,
again, because Watkins ran in behind and caused a bit of danger. Cole Palmer playing off the right is really important. You can't get all these players in the same team. This is the problem England have had forever. You can't play Scholes, Lampard, Gerrard and Carrick all at the same time. I mean, you probably could if you play a box with wing backs. Maybe that was the solution all along. I've just fixed it. That's how you do it.
In the box with wing backs.
Yeah, they could have played Scholes and Carrick as 2 6s, and then Lampard and Gerrard as 8s with wing backs. With a striker, come on now.
Have you not run out of players? Isn't that too many players? That's including the
There's
strikers.
11 on a team, and that's only 4 so far.
The 8s would be the strikers.
What? No, there's a striker above
4
it.
plus 5 is 9. You got 1 striker up front.
What if you have a box and you have a striker, and then you have another player? You have 3 and 2 wide players.
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess it does.
I've just fixed England in the past.
Somebody call Sven. Yeah. Speaking of, Sven, would Sven? Never mind, Sven. Switzerland. We're talking about Switzerland. John, focus. We're talking about Switzerland.
Sorry for letting us get sidetracked there.
He's letting us down again, JJ. Now listen, this is what JJ thinks will happen. He said that's what he would do if he was the England manager, and he hangs his hat and his career reputation on that being the best option for all. He thinks that's how England would win the Euros. What do you think?
Are you asking me about how I think England should play against Switzerland?
Yeah. Pretty much. I guess that's what I'm saying.
So I think part of the problem here is that because what we're saying is England
What's the problem?
The problem is that England don't have collective ideas to be able to break down opponents. So they've sort of made their bed, they have to lie in it. And I think that when you're in that scenario, the only thing you can really do is sort of throw excrement at the wall and see what sticks. Which is what's been happening, right? So we're like, okay, well, we'll start off with Trent Alexander-Arnold in the centre. That hasn't worked, so maybe it will work with Gallagher. Oh, that hasn't worked. Maybe it'll work with Mainu. Oh, if that isn't working, let's try Adam Wharton.
Excrement, you said.
Yes. I thought that was the appropriate word.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah.
All of these solutions that people are going to offer now are going to be like, well, the way we solve this is by putting this player on the pitch, or we slightly change the structure so that we can get a different player in the pitch. None of these solutions are going to be actually fundamental, systemic solutions, right? Because you just don't have the time to do that right now. So there's an argument to be made that this is the best that it's ever going to be. This is what you have to do, and you have to just hope that those moments keep coming through. And because that's the reality of it, right? I don't think there's like some sort of like easy fix here where it's like, what we forgot, but we've got this really good player who we're just not playing and put them in, and then suddenly like everything.
David Beckham.
Yeah. I mean, David Beckham. I mean, Trent Alexander-Arnold is David Beckham in this scenario, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah,
a left back.
So what do you do then? You're coming up against a team like Switzerland, who they're probably the team, maybe bar Germany, who feels like they are the most domestic team because they have box defending ideas, they have mid block ideas, they have high pressing ideas, they have build up ideas, they have what we're going to like ball progression ideas. They have we can squeeze you into your own third and then break that low block down. They have pretty much everything. Bar maybe like some set piece ideas because like you really don't have time to like solve set pieces in the international game, right?
They prepared the Bellingham overhead kick throw though.
Yeah, that's right. They were like throw it in the box and then Bellingham will overhead kick it in.
They did that in training.
Yeah, but your tactics are also dependent not just on how your team plays, but how the opposition is going to play against you. So you've got to adapt. Like Switzerland, we can go through how Switzerland play.
Please
something you could worry about.
Yeah.
So it looks a bit like a 3-4-3. It's one of the things that's interesting, I think, all the way through the Switzerland team is that talking of domestic team, like why they play like a club team, is because the tactics are almost geared towards the way that certain individual players play. Like Sommer,
key players.
Yeah, Sommer won the league playing it in Serie A. He can go long or play short. So you got options. Like Inter do that.
Yeah.
You got Xhaka who won the league playing a system.
He lost one game.
One game, yeah. But in a system not dissimilar to this, with wing backs who get really high up, and also becomes a box midfield a lot of the time. But what you've also got is like Abasher, so this left wing back. So when they push forward, you got Embolo. I'm going too over the place, but Embolo. A striker who can either run in behind, really important, but also drop in and hold up play when you want. So loads of different options. But when you push up, what you often get is Abasher, this left wing back, will come inside the pitch to end up like an extra number 10. You saw him set up a couple of goals, even scored one doing this.
Yeah.
Then you've got.
I'm just laughing at how excited you are.
Well,
I feel like you're talking like you've just been to see The Strokes last night, and I was saying, how was it? You're like, it was amazing. This happened.
That's right.
Yeah.
All the boys were there. Abasher.
Yeah. Xhaka,
Julian Casablancas.
The Strokes. Go on.
So then what happens is you get these players like Xhaka will maybe pull out left a bit because Ricardo Rodriguez will overlap. Because he's like that, and then you get Akanji and Shearer for more of a back two, slightly lopsided like that.
Akanji, no stranger to structured systems.
Well, exactly. Another player who won the league last season, and so he knows how to play in this always moving kind of shape. And Freuler and Xhaka have played together for a long time, so that they know how to do. This works. This all works. But then because Abasher moves in like this, you don't know who tracks him. Like who goes? If this is the shape that England play, does he go with him or does he hand him over? And then when he hands him over, who goes? Does Mainu take him? Who takes him? And when he goes in here, that's then pretty much an overload against his back three. So then you've got to drop in someone here. You've got players running here. But also, then you've got Vargas can also go out wide to cause a bit of an overload here if they're all ganged up. So that you can get overloads in this sort of situation. Or he can nip in behind when you don't expect it, catching players out. So your marking system becomes really hugely complicated. And so the safest thing to do if you're Gareth Southgate is just don't do that, sit back in 4-2-3-1 and try and block and hit.
And pop Watkins on maybe to run in behind.
Well, yeah, because like, everything you do with the England team, you've got to think what Switzerland going to do.
Yeah.
Like, the Swiss manager before the Italy game said that if Italy play a back four, we'll destroy them.
Yeah.
And he'll have watched how England play out from the back and how simple it is for teams to stop them playing out. And he'll know exactly where to show the ball and when to pounce.
They look so good against
good,
Italy. So let's move on to the England team then, kind of forgetting about the lineup sort of for now, because there are a couple of key positions here. Trippier went off injured in the Slovakia game. It's worth saying Luke Shaw is in training. I think he's likely to start probably. I don't know that to be true, but I imagine that is the case. Mark Gahey is suspended from this game. So, John, who?
Well, I mean, they bring on Lewis Dunk, I guess, or maybe. I mean, Constance played left back, so maybe he's happy playing him on the left side.
Do you think they'll play a four? Do you think they'll play a three?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think if he plays a three, it's very much him just being like, well, I've got no idea. The idea of bringing on Lewis Dunk and then bringing Luke Shaw on, who's not played football for. I mean, he will have had like 2 or 3 training sessions.
He's a real hero, though.
He is not playing 90 minutes. There's no way.
Sure.
So
he's playing 120.
You're still going to have the same issue of like, even if Trippier
he's not playing again for another year.
Yeah. So you're going to have the issue with the wing back at some point.
Oh, you're going to have an issue with him, yeah.
If Trippier isn't available.
Yeah. Well, if we just find a finisher to come on, it'll be fine.
That's right. Yeah.
Ashley Cole.
So yeah, it's not looking great, especially when you are a team that you relies on individual brilliance, and then you're putting players in positions that aren't their usual positions to try and be brilliant in when they're not usually brilliant in those positions. So yeah.
One more question. Please
don't make it one that makes me look.
No, it won't. Look, as far as substitutions go, Now, Southgate appears to think that there's one way to fix the team, which is to constantly change the right central midfielder position. And I've got a list here kindly inserted by producer Chris. In the Serbia game, Alexander-Arnold was subbed. Again in the Denmark game, Gallagher started, Slovenia was subbed, Mainu started, Slovakia was subbed. Who do you expect to start there? And as a secondary follow-up question, this is to both of you, Adam Wharton, I hear all sorts of good things. Personally, I've never seen him play. I don't know anything about him. But I hear everyone likes to go, what about that one that isn't doing it, isn't playing at all? He would win the Euros on his own. Who do you think should start the Switzerland game? And do you think that there is a genuine shout for Wharton to play? Or is that just kind of, he's an option that we haven't seen yet and it's exciting and it's not working now, so why not say that, because there's no harm, and you can say whatever you want as a YouTube commenter, and I hate those people, I hate you. What do you think?
I think he'll go with Mainu because he's brought Mainu in, and I think Mainu was fine in the second half when England were sort of allowed easy ball progression anyway.
Definitely does more forward passing and
sure,
running.
I think in the second half you want a player like Mainu. What you get with a player like Adam Wharton is two things. One is that he will naturally improve the tempo of the game because he receives the ball and plays it quickly. The other thing he's really good at is playing it through lines of pressure, which again, as we've said, part of the reason why England have struggled this tournament is because they always end up playing in the channels because they can't play through the middle. When you have a player like Wharton, because he receives the ball quickly, plays it quickly, you'll probably find more passes going through the middle of the field, which will improve England.
Yeah.
So again, we've talked a lot about how if you don't have collective ideas, the best thing to do is just try and get the players who allow you to do the things that you need to do the best. And I think Wharton, in terms of ball progression under pressure, to move the ball through central lines of progression to pressure is probably the best option. But again, that's just one guy doing it. It's not going to. fix
you bring in
everything.
someone who wants to up the tempo with a bunch of players around him who are definitely lowering the tempo. It just doesn't then match, and you get.
And there's questions about whether or not there's a tactical element to this. We were talking before about England getting in behind. They don't do that. They could do that. They've got players who do that, and Gareth Southgate clearly doesn't think that they should be doing that. Why is that the case? Well, because he is more risk averse. He doesn't want to open up the game and make it end to end because he's worried about if you do start lumping the ball forward. I mean, it's the famous Juan Leo quote, which is like the faster the ball goes forward, the quicker it comes back, and that's a reality for Southgate. He doesn't want to make this game transitional because as soon as you do that, it becomes a much more risky game for him because he would expect to be able to break teams down anyway. Hasn't happened that way, so maybe they might, but it seems unlikely that he's suddenly just going to be like, right, we're going to tear up the tactical textbook and just go aggressive and risky and long.
And also, I seem to remember everyone being really happy about how England played when they were winning games in a couple of tournaments ago. Because they've done the same thing for a few tournaments now, and they expect to have already won the Euros before it started, then it changes the way that you perceive the team.
Who expects that?
Some people.
Some.
The bookies expected England to win. They still do. They're still very good odds.
They weren't that.
They didn't expect England to win the tournament before it started. I think before it started, they expected England to win the tournament. That's a very.
I think, in fairness to JJ, that's what he was saying. He wasn't saying that they were just going to get given the trophy before the.
No. There was a little. No. There's one or two daggers in there, and I'm just going to listen. I'm going to keep on top of it.
I think he's been well behaved, personally.
JJ, I agree with you, but everyone's behaviour can always be better.
What we need is a different person in that seat, right? Who change up the. That's what you say.
With an accent that's more English.
Wow,
an England fan. I want an England fan.
Solving problems one person at a time.
If one of you cared about England doing well, I'd be happier. But the chat, listen. What happens to me?
Neutral.
You've been very good. I'm in jest. I'm playing in jest with you. But I just want someone around me to love me and want the things I want to happen.
May I introduce you to all of the rest of England?
Sorry, say that again.
There's plenty of people around.
I don't want them.
If you want,
I want you to
if you want happy
No, you're remembering the environment we're in.
Oh yes, of course, we're live. Now listen, what were we saying? Some of you were saying something about the midfield positions.
Yes, that's right. So Adam Wharton, I also really like as a player. I think there's probably tactical reasons, but potentially also just man management reasons. He might just be young and really excited, and it's quite a lot to deal with all of a sudden. He's gone from playing Championship football to Premier League to suddenly being...
He spent half a season in Premier League as well.
Yeah, it's a lot to deal with as a human person. So I think it's fairly...
Having said that, Mainu's only played like a season. Right?
But the pressure at Man United is just different, isn't it?
That's right.
So you get that as well. There must be reasons for it. He might be doing things that Southgate doesn't exactly want him to do. If his natural inclination is to do like one touch or two touch real quick passing in the midfield and there's no one there to receive it, that's at risk of you being pounced on and losing the ball in transition. So again, it's probably real tactical reasons. But like my point I was trying to make before being silly was that England weren't dissimilar to this in previous tournaments, and people liked it because they were on the up, because they were so bad before. It was all broken, grassroots reform, and then it's come through slowly, and this is the way they are playing. And I think it's one of the reasons that the comments Southgate's made about how odd it is in the camp. How's the mood in the camp? Is that everything's weird with it because it's changed now. It's been like their expectations high, like it usually is or was.
Yeah.
But this is what you get. This is how you get through things. They've already got through. It's been pretty lucky, but they have managed to get through it.
Yeah. I hate it so much. It makes me so unhappy, and I was so anxious during the Slovakia game. I was commiserating with my wife. I watched it at home, and I was sort of. She doesn't watch football very often, so but she's been watching.
So you treated her to that.
I treated her to the Slovakia game. I said, "You're going to love this one. This is the perfect example of the best football game." We were getting towards the end, and we were remembering what happened at the end of the last Euros and at the end of the World Cup, and some of the treatment that the players received from people, from England fans, some of the England fans, whatever. And we were very sad about it. And then Bellingham scored an overhead kick, and I thought my heart was going to explode. I can't keep doing it. So in a way, I sort of wish they'd already gone out, because I'm so not looking forward to the Switzerland game. I think they are going to win. I'll put it out there, like not from any sense, just from they won't deserve to win, and then they will. And then we'll think, well, God, whoever they've got in the semi, they're going to get all the way to the final. That'll be the hard game, and then they'll go out in the semi. That's what I think will happen. Who's going to win the Switzerland game, John? What do you think?
Well, I mean, England are going to win the tournament because good things never happen. But look, it can work. You can win that way. You can win playing that kind of football. It's much less likely that you will do that, and it's quite a risky way of doing it. But they can still do it, and we'll constantly have this conversation about whether collective systems trump individuals, and it's a really reductive argument because obviously there's an overlap between the two of them. Systems are made of people, and individuals play in systems, right? But whoever wins, it's either going to be one of the tactical teams is going to win. Yeah. Germany will win, Spain will win, and everyone will be like, what a victory for tacticos all around the world.
On that point, before you continue, someone in the chat, I'm desperately trying to find it, it was Lance Sebastian who said, Austria had cool, solid tactics, but then they got dunked by Turkey.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the reality, right? Austria deserved to win that game. If you put that into an XG model, like Austria were more likely to win that game 4-0 than they were to lose it, and they lost it.
They got like
that's the reality of knockout football. It's always going to be that way. I'm not going to come here and be like, yes, great, well, a victory for tacticos around the world, because you'll still, like Real Madrid still win games, right? And the domestic game has never been more tactically aware. And obviously Real Madrid use tactics, as I've already said, that distinction is reductive.
Sure.
But if England win, or if Portugal win and they do it in a scabby way,
or France,
we're going to have the people going the other way being like, oh, these tacticos don't know what they're talking about, because all that matters is the players they have. The reality is that football is always going to be like this. One team, you can win playing one way, you can win playing the other way. You're probably more likely to win with good players in a tactical system than you are with good players without a tactical system. You're probably more likely to win with good players without a tactical system than bad players with a good tactical system. That's just the reality.
Unless you're Scotland.
Yeah, that's true.
Tacticos around the world. John Mackenzie's big hit single. That one. I'd love to hear that. What do you think? Who's going to win the Switzerland-England game?
I'm already starting to sing that in my head.
Yeah.
I think tacticos or Switzerland. I think England will win it because they'll find a way through somehow. I think Switzerland will cause them real problems.
Now we've all said it, they're going to lose. That's how football works, isn't it? That's the real truth about football.
You can't inverse psychology this one.
I think you can.
The reality is,
Switzerland are
God is an
genuinely
England
good.
fan, and he will make sure it happens.
It's knockout football. It's the thing. These like the team with the better individuals tends to win these games because the little moment comes. Like, Bellingham.
Even with Portugal, right? You get to the penalty shootout. The difference between the Portugal players and the Slovenia players was notable, and that's the reality. Is you can hold out for 120 minutes, and then you have to go up in a penalty shootout where it seems random, but the better players are going to be more likely to score their penalties than the less good players.
Diogo Costa, darling. I watched those. I thought when I was watching that, it is live. When I was,
and yet
I'm just saying it out loud. I'm still saying things. Diogo Costa. When it was live, I was watching the 3 penalty saves that he made in a row, and I thought, God, I've never seen that before. Turns out, no keeper at the Euros has ever done that before. Wow.
Has any keeper before not actually conceded from?
No, and that was the other record.
Because that's insane. I was thinking this because you said to me straight after the game, you're like, I've never seen 3, and I was like, I can't think of 3 saves in a row. But to actually have a team not even concede a penalty, that's pretty rare.
Do you see that video of the man who had a time traveller that went into his shed?
What?
It was in America. There was the man who went into a shed and then he came out as a different man.
As a time traveller?
Yeah, it was a time traveller.
Didn't see that
Did he change his clothes?
Well, he
wasn't Joe
looked
Biden,
a bit like the same guy but older.
Right.
This is a great story if you want to follow it on all the different video things. Anyway, that might have been Diogo Costa in the future, finding out, or maybe his goalkeeper analyst. Finding out where the penalties were going.
Can I tell you an interesting fact? It's totally unrelated. I'm looking at producer Chris now. It's completely unrelated to football. But our American colleague Alex Hampel told me this the other day. This is about the American election. Don't worry, Chris, it's fine. Bill Clinton, who was obviously the American president in the 90s, is younger than Joe Biden and Donald Trump. He's younger now than Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
Right?
Isn't that incredible?
Well,
we'll say no more.
Quite old.
They are, well, no, I
They're
understand.
in their 80s, aren't
There we go. He liked it the first time I told him that stat, and now he's pretending that he didn't.
No, I think it's completely understandable in every way.
Listen, points are bad, John.
Points are bad.
They're very, very bad.
As is the game.
They're really bad?
No, they're good.
Points
JJ.
are bad. They're very, very bad.
Points are good.
No, they're very, very bad. Points are bad.
Points are bad.
You don't want the points.
You don't want the points.
Because the points are bad.
Because they're very, very bad. Now, welcome to the points are bad section of the podcast. Unfortunately, we couldn't play the music. Yeah, there was a nice songs of praise. Yeah,
Couldn't get the rights to it.
We couldn't get the rights to our own song, and we couldn't work out how to do it just ahead of the thing. But we're going to play points are bad now. Now, listen, I'm very excited about this, John, because it's a real toss-up for us. It's a real throwdown. JJ Bull scuppered himself a little bit by being a Scotland fan and having a team that he actually supports in the tournament. So he went with
anyone but England hasn't helped him either.
Yeah, and with a couple of
those are
wayward
realistic predictions.
1-0 for England in every game.
He then tried to claw his way back into points are bad by doing a lot of 1-1s and 1-0s, but getting quite unlucky, I would say, and doing that on weekdays where there was high scoring. So it's very funny that JJ, you're not quite last. Seb Stafford-Bloor, who's in the chat, is currently last on... No, these scores are wrong. We've got the wrong scores here, guys. I think it's because I've put the things in already. Let me get my phone up and I'll get them on Twitter, whatever I said yesterday. JJ, would you fill for me for a moment,
Can't
please?
you get these chat to give you the scores?
For anyone who's unclear as to what on earth is going on now, say, for example, you haven't ever seen us on a video before and you don't know what any of this is. Well, Points Are Bad is a game that we've played at various tournaments where we have to predict the scores for the games that are happening, and there's an order to it. So you can't have the same score as someone else. Say, for example, if I said that England were going to beat anyone 1-0, it meant that the person who comes after me can't then also do 1-0. They'd have to do a different score.
That's right.
And you get a point.
Points are bad. That's the important thing.
Yeah,
right?
you don't want points.
And you get more points the further away from the score that you are.
It's not even really about the result, is it?
So if I said...
I don't even think about football when I pick it now. I work out the mathematical probability of
Let JJ explain.
I'm trying to tell the folks.
Yeah, tell the folks.
I'll tell the folks. So if I if I predicted that England were going to beat anyone 1-0 and then they beat someone 2-0, I would get 1 point.
What if it was 2-1?
Then I would get 2 points.
And do you think, that's
because
clear.
one goal for their team is 1 point, and because I didn't say they'd score any, you see, and because England scored one more than I thought they would, therefore 2 points, therefore 2 points bad.
It's a deeply intellectual game for intellectual people.
What about the Devine clause, though, which is that if it goes to extra time and penalties, you then have to suggest who is going to win the penalties, and if you get it wrong, you actually get a point for that.
It's the punishment for people who want to say 1-1, because the thing about points about is if you say 1-1 in every fixture, for example, you're sort of statistically the closest to the outcome of all of the different scores. So, and the screen's gone weird, and that's distracted everyone, and now we've thrown off the point. Anyway, the point is we're playing points are bad, and it's near the end of the live stream now, and we've all lost the ability to keep an internal structure. What I was saying, John, was that Sebastian Stafford-Bloor is currently in last place, which, according, with JJ explaining the rules to the folks, he means that he picks first for the next set of games. We've already got his predictions in here, and I'm going to tell you those shortly. In third place currently is JJ Bull, as discussed. A few wayward predictions for Scotland and England's thrown him behind a little bit, and just a general lack of, I would say, ability to play the game well has kept him locked to Stafford-Bloor there. It's very much a two-horse race for last.
If this game tells us anything, it's the people at the top of the table are the ones who really understand football.
I would say that's true, because I'm in second with 79 points. There's a 6-point gap between the two. It's very insurmountable at this point, I would say. Just one behind you, John. And I have to say, yesterday, after the first game, I was actually first. For a good hour, I was first. Now, we've already got Seb's. Sadly, he can't be with us for the live stream today, but we've already got his predictions. And the next two games that we're predicting for on Friday, they are corkers, although one does have a shout for being potentially the most boring.
I can't believe we've reached the final already. It seems to have gone quickly.
And you say that because the first game I'm about to talk about is Spain-Germany. Now, Seb has gone for a friendly 1-1 here and has predicted that Germany will win the game on penalties. I'm not going to bother explaining the penalties rule. JJ Bull, you're the next person to make a prediction for Spain-Germany. What do you think that's going to be? And if you want to talk about why, feel free, but you don't have to.
I think there's going to be goals in this, but they're both very, very ticked together, so it's kind of hard to separate them. Germany have home advantage, which is a real thing, and I think Spain, when they've won any sort of tournament, it was Jimbo was saying last night that they've never beaten a host nation on the way to doing that. There's some sort of stat that makes that.
Sure. They've never won when they've been host nation.
Yeah, something like that. So I think it'll be 2-2.
Whoa.
And I think Spain will win on penalties.
Wow, okay, so we're really leaving John some options here. So you think Spain on penalties 2-2?
You hate this, don't you? You're like,
I don't like it. Normally my tactic is to wait to hear what you and Seb have predicted and then to take the final two options that John will want so that he can't have them. For Spain-Germany, it's me to predict now. I feel confident that Germany are going to win this game. I really do. I think it's going to be 1-2 to Germany, a 2-1 victory to Germany. John, you've got quite a lot of options left.
Yeah, I'm going to go the other way to you.
2-1 to Spain.
That at least gives us the possibility of you going ahead again.
Okay, fine. Right, the other game, which is the one that I think, it sounds incredible, but it's in for a shout for potentially being what could be the most boring game of the entire tournament, is Portugal-France. Now, starting with Seb Stafford-Bloor, Seb's thrown a bit of a curveball here. Seb's predicted a 2-1 win to Portugal. Not a 1-0 win, which I could see happening, but a 2-1 win to Portugal. Bit rogue. And then I think he instantly regretted it. I just called him on the phone before this and he was pressed for time. JJ Bull, the options are all there for you.
1-0 France.
1-0 France. I think that's a good shout.
Can I guess what you were going to go for?
You want to guess my guess before your own guess?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I reckon you might go 2-1.
Is he trying to trick me into doing something that
2-1
I am going to go 2-1? That's right. That's why I'm going to do 2-1 France. What have you got left then, John? Portugal, France.
You went 1-0. See, this is the thing, right? So when the favourite goes like 1-0, 2-1, you then have to go high or low, or you go 1-1.
Sure.
And bank on it being a low score.
Yeah.
So you have to go high or low.
You could go 2-0. I mean, I think there's a fairly good opportunity that Portugal don't score in this game.
That's true. That is true. Because in the games yesterday, it was like all of the options were taken: 1-0, 2-1, and 2-2.
And I mean, they failed to score in open play.
Yeah. I'll go 2-0.
And when you win, I will accept some credit.
That's quite nice for you, I think, because with the 2-1, you've got the option of if the opposition score, then you will gain points.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll go with 2-0 though.
Wow. Okay. Fantastic. Well, I think
you'll be ahead.
Do you think so?
I think we'll be ahead.
I hope so.
I don't have a huge amount of faith in my predictions here.
My plan is to go ahead in the final game day so that I can pick in front of you for the entire rest of the game. Now, listen, let me tell you, we're going to wrap up here now. Firstly, let me say thank you to you, JJ Bull.
Yes.
And to you, John Mackenzie.
My pleasure.
Producer Chris, we're expecting to do more live streams in the coming days, aren't we? Can you remind me off the top of your head when the next one is? Do you know? He's not prepared. Producer Chris isn't prepared. He was sitting there in the back of the room on his phone.
His laptop was folded.
His laptop was closed.
He was done.
He wasn't even listening to us.
He was on the beach.
Yeah. It's because as soon as we talked about the American presidential election, he just switched off.
Points about big time.
He tuned out, yeah. Poor Chris is in the Points Are Bad WhatsApp group. It's a toil for him.
Yeah,
It's a toil for me.
The 11th. We think we'll be back on the 11th for the next live stream, and they'll increase in frequency as the tournament goes on. I don't know exactly when, but we're going to work it out, and it's going to be fun. So thanks for joining us today. Lovely to see Seb Stafford Bloor in the chat, as well as so many others of you. And if you're hankering for some live football analysis related action on a daily basis, and we can't provide that, you should check out the Totally Football Show. Jimbo, just next door in the podcast studio there, every night with some fabulous guests. JJ, you've been on it a couple of times.
I was on it last night.
You were on it last night.
You can watch the video back on the YouTubes.
They're going live on YouTube after every game day, and it's really fun. They're doing a terrific job. So if you're looking for more of that, head over to the Totally Football Show. And we'll see you next time we're back. But until then, I was going to say ta-ra, thank you, goodbye.